I hate snakes. Snakes. The worst place in a zoo for me is where you can go. I remember at the Indianapolis Zoo, you go down to this space. It's like a little cave look, and you go down and there's just like these little pockets in the middle of cement of snakes. And every time I walk into this space of snakes, I know super thick glass, the snakes are not getting out. Like you walk by, rattlesnake, that'll kill me. You just keep going into this more venomous snakes. And it's like, why do people have just an infatuation with poisonous things? But they do. Anyways, so the last time I was at the zoo was a couple years ago. And don't judge me for not going to the zoo recently, it's a fair statement. But I was at the zoo and we went through the snake section, and all that was going through my mind was, oh my goodness, what if there was an earthquake right now and all of these snakes got out while I'm down in this dumb pit with snakes? Now, maybe one of the first questions you might ask is, when was the last time there was an earthquake, Jeremy, that would cause a problem in this scenario? However, my fear of snakes is so deep and just so consuming at times that if I see a little bitty green snake about this big, Sarah and I were out hiking at Turkey Run a few months ago in the middle of quarantine, and I find a little snake this big, Jeremy screams at the highest pitch possible and runs the opposite direction on a snake about this big. I'm sure you, whoever you are watching this video, has a fear that matches that level, if not surpasses it. Because every single one of us struggle with this really big concept called insecurities. And for me, snakes are literally a massive insecurity. It doesn't matter what the setting is, whether it's this big and it's a cute little green snake, I should add, or a rattlesnake that I know could kill me in about 5 seconds with a bite. Every single one of us has something in our lives, an insecurity that takes us over. That's why there's just blogs and videos and documentary series on Netflix all about phobias. Because every single one of us has a fear of something, whether it be spiders. Like, if you want to know how deep my insecurity is when it comes to snakes, I would rather sit in a pool of spiders. You choose a spider. I don't care. I don't care if you pick a brown recluse. I don't care. You pick the spider. I would rather be in a pool of spiders than to meet a rattlesnake, ever in my life. And I can just say there have been times where it's been crippling. I'm going through the zoo and I'm literally walking like it just paralyzes me. It's crazy. Here's the thing. I know that this is such a real reality for all of us, that you might be struggling with insecurity so bad that you will hit a moment like Jeremy does in the zoo next to snakes, where it just seems to paralyze everything about you. You can barely walk, let alone talk, let alone be in community or relationships with people. So here's my first question for you. What is your insecurity? I know I'm not trying to get into snakes here. What is your real insecurity? Well, as you've probably come to know, I'm vulnerable. I'm going to tell you the truth. My real insecurity is failure. And going through middle school and high school specifically, when it came to sports or education or whatever, the fear of failure was such a huge thing for me that it crippled me and paralyzed me at so many points in my life. It's honestly intimidating to admit, but it's also sad reality for Jeremy when he was in high school. And I'm sure you have those. So for the next couple of minutes, I want to walk you through what I think is a great, solid battle plan. Video 2 of our battle plan series, a battle plan to fight your insecurities. So here's the first question you need to ask about whatever insecurity first came to your mind. Don't forget what that was. Don't think about snakes or spiders. Get into your real ones. What are your insecurities that are going to prevent you from being the person that God wants you to be? Here's the big key question I think you need to ask yourself. What big insecurity is holding you back from being who God has called you to be? You have to own that insecurity. I know I asked you what your insecurity was, but if you don't own that insecurity, you're never going to take that first step of actually fighting that insecurity, because you have to get over denial. It took me way too many years to figure out that failure was my greatest insecurity. I was in my mid-20s when I finally figured it out, that I never wanted to fail and I would do anything and everything I could to not fail. You've got to fight that insecurity. So what do you do when an insecurity comes? Well, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 says this, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need to live a godly life. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who has called us into his marvelous glory and excellence. Another way to say it is from John chapter 1, verse 12 and 13, that those who believe in Jesus Christ have been saved and have been called children of God. You're actually adopted into something far greater than yourself. This is an important distinction as we think about the idea of insecurities, because if you are truly a believer in Jesus Christ, you know the author of all life's questions, even when he doesn't want to give you an answer. That's huge. I didn't say that you know the guy who's willing to give you all the answers. I'm reminding you that you know the author to all the answers. Our greatest pain is if there's anything I can tell you from growing up as a middle school student who cared way too much about how he looked and what girls thought of him, truthfully. As a guy who I've already admitted struggled greatly with pornography and other major issues in high school, here's what I can tell you from my experience. My greatest pain in life came from my greatest regret. Your greatest pain when you are 40 years old, when you are 60 years old, when you're 20 years old, even when you're 15 years old, your greatest pain will always be your greatest regret. So, what would be your greatest regret? Ready for this? If you didn't say no to a situation. Maybe you're insecure about social stuff and you don't want your friend or your girlfriend or boyfriend to not like you and you get insecure about it. What would be your greatest regret if you didn't say no to that situation? Maybe you're a young lady who is feeling the pressure to give to a boy, something that you weren't designed to give to him. Maybe you're a boy and it's the same thing for a girl. You're not designed to give that to her. And you feel this social pressure and you get insecure about it all. Ask yourself this question. What would be your greatest regret if you said no? Now flip it around and you could ask this question. What would be your greatest regret if you don't say yes? Because there are certain times in life that our greatest fears paralyze us in such a way that we actually don't even say yes to the things that we want to say yes to. Here's a good example. Maybe you love music and you love to sing and you love to dance and you love drama. But your greatest fear is rejection and you don't want to not get the best part in the next year's musical or play. And as a result of that, your greatest regret in life might be never saying yes to trying. So your first step to a battle plan to slaying your insecurities is actually realizing what your greatest regret will be if you don't say yes or if you don't say no, depending on the circumstances. So as this video ends, I want you really to take a moment to start asking this question, and maybe even right now, pause the screen before I give you a summary idea to walk away with. In order to start slaying the greatest insecurities in your life, you need to start realizing that your greatest pain for the rest of your life will be the regret that you live with for saying yes or saying no. And in order to get to that, figure that out, you've got to ask these two questions, depending on the circumstances, which one you'll ask. What will be my greatest regret if I don't say no? Or depending on the circumstances, what will be my greatest regret if I don't say yes? You'll remember maybe from the last video about your game plan to saying no to porn. I gave you these 5 things. I want you to leave with this as you think about those 2 questions. Our 5 step was this: confess it. You have to own that this is your insecurity, whatever it is. You also need to confess it to someone else. Who's a safe person? Whether it's me, or maybe it's Kimmy G, maybe it's Brian, maybe it's Aaron, maybe it's one of your amazing small group leaders, or maybe you're not even connected with Grace Church at all, and so you have no idea the people I'm talking about. Talk to somebody that you trust. Confess it, own it to somebody else. 3, you gotta remove those triggers. You've gotta find a way. Don't walk back in the zoo if you're worried about snakes and an earthquake. Actually, I'll go to the zoo, I just don't go to the snake section anymore, because it's that big of a fair. Number 4, get professional help when needed. Literally go to people who really want to help you And number 5, let God heal that wound. I have so many regrets in life. But one regret I don't have up to this point in my life now is that I have owned it, I've confessed it, I've shared it with people, I've got professionals around me who are caring for me on a regular basis, and lastly, most importantly, I'm going to the source of all the answers. I know the author. I believe in the name of Jesus Christ. He has called me a child of God. I think the same can be true for you, and your greatest insecurities are not going to be cured just because you ask a question about regret, even though I believe it's step 1. You have to go to the author. Truly, literally, genuinely right now, pray about it. So in quick summary, what will be your greatest regret tomorrow if you don't say no? Or depending on the circumstances, what will be your greatest regret if you don't say yes?